Grim really is trying to keep me on my toes, ain't he? Welcome back, Canonites, for another edition of Canon Fodder, the news article that serves as an additional and unconventional connection to our favorite universe. Today's issue is on the lighter side, but contains some valuable information. And starting things off strong is a rather special milestone. As it turns out, last week was the 7th anniversary of Canon Fodder, the first issue having dropped as part of a community update on September 24th, 2014. It's crazy to think back to what were essentially just recaps of the games and how the series has evolved into a mainstay on Halo Waypoint. Congratulations to 7 years, Grim Brother 1, Jeff Easterling, and here's to many more. September really has been a month of milestones, hasn't it? From there, though, we dive into some more lore tidbits concerning items from Halo Infinite, starting with the M808 main battle tank, aka the Scorpion. After a detour into a more realistic tank design for Halo 5, Infinite returns to the classic Scorpion design. Widely considered the apex of UNSC tank design, the M808 is effectively a massive mobile battle platform armed with an M512 smoothbore heavy cannon and supplementary machine gun for ancillary engagements. Not much to talk about here that we haven't already, especially after 2 years of Halo Armory videos, but what really stood out here is that we have yet to get a full designation for this tank. It's part of the M808 line, yes, but is this Halo CE's M808B or Halo 3 Reach or 4's M808C, or is it a model we haven't seen before? Is it an original M808, or maybe it's an M808D or something? We'll have to wait and see for now. I'm personally leaning towards a newer model, but driving an old M808 pulled out of reserves or something would just be really damn cool. Next up is where things get really interesting, the shock rifle. Produced by the Sakat Workshop, the shock rifle is designated as a Volt Piercer, and as is often the case with brute weaponry, has ties to their pre-Covenant age. Charged and maintained at local armory outposts, the shock rifle is a long-range banished electro-taser, the latest in a long line of experimental voltaic application devices that represent some of the only remaining vestiges of the Jiralhanae's own great technological age. For context, sometime prior to the Jiralhanae being discovered by the Covenant, they actually managed to reach the 4th tier of the Forerunner Technological Achievement chart, meaning they were able to reach and potentially colonize the space near their homeworld. However, the Jiralhanae's warring nature got the better of them, resulting in a nuclear war known as the First Immolation. I always found that a rather funny name, as the war had just ended when the species was found by the Covenant, so they hadn't yet been subject to a second immolation, but the Jiralhanae are apparently such realists or pessimists that they just figured it would happen again. Anyway, the Covenant discovered the Jiralhanae soon after the immolation, and you basically know the rest. During their time with the Covenant, many weapons and vehicles would eventually be produced, often retaining some of the more primitive aspects, for lack of a better word, of their native technology. With the shock rifle, we seem to have the first in a new line of Jiralhanae-produced weapons, and it's rather interesting that they seem so focused on electricity. Besides being a new damage type in Halo Infinite, electricity itself is actually a form of plasma, or rather electricity flowing through the air, such as we see with the shock rifle or with natural occurrences like lightning, excites the particles around it, causing them to ionize and resulting in the brilliant light we see. This is plasma. So the shock rifle, and the other voltaic devices the Banished are crafting, are basically the earliest steps towards the development of proper, Covenant-style plasma weaponry. Finally, we have the Heatwave, our first Forerunner gun from Halo Infinite, one whose design I personally have issues with, but we'll get to that. For now, let's read the description. Once employed by Forerunner warrior servants, the Heatwave is a robust hardlight projector that fires multiple energized shards which can effectively slice through living creatures while bouncing off dense terrain or architecture. Equipped with alternate firing modes that allow its wielder to tune the weapon's variable impact geometry on demand. There's not too much to really read into with the description itself, it's rather straightforward. The design, however, hints at much more. Featuring a notable lack of floating geometry, the Heatwave is the first Forerunner gun that, so far, hasn't been expressly stated to be meant for use against the Flood. This would seem to hint that it might be a much older design. The fact it disintegrates enemies, however, hints that perhaps the gun was updated later on to be something more effective against the Flood. Hell, if we really want to get crazy, maybe its design and even function date back to the Forerunner fight against the Precursors. That would be insane, but damn cool. However, this is all baseless speculation based on potentially faulty assumptions. We'll have to wait to get more concrete information. One thing I should comment on, however, is its similarity to Halo 4 and 5's Scattershot. Besides just the functional similarity, shooting out a bunch of ricocheting projectiles, the Scattershot was actually a weapon first used by Builder Security. Builder Security was a military organization within the Forerunner Builder Rate. After a millennia-long battle between Forerunners and Warrior Servants about how to best handle the Flood, the Warrior Servants lost and many ended up joining the newly established Builder Security. Perhaps, as the Scattershot was the Builder solution to the Flood problem, the Heatwave was the Warrior Servant solution. Still though, we know very little about the guns, so don't read into anything I've brought up here. That all said, I really do need to comment on the gun's design. I don't dislike it, I want to emphasize in advance, but as a design for a Forerunner weapon, I just can't get behind it. Pushing aside its dissimilarity to the Forerunner weapons we've known for the last 9 years alone, it barely resembles some of the other Forerunner weapons we've seen, such as the guns from Halo 4's Terminals or even the Sentinel Beam. Granted, the Sentinel Beam isn't normally meant to be wielded as a weapon by a bipedal warrior, but still. The Heatwave lacks any traditional signs of being a Forerunner weapon, no floating or exaggerated geometry or lines of light across its body, instead looking more like a UNSC-produced gun that was reverse-engineered from a Forerunner weapon. There's no way the design can change so close to launch, and one YouTuber expressing dissatisfaction won't do much, but I hope that future Forerunner guns can be given more unique profiles and designs. They should stand out as their own line of weapons, distinct from UNSC or Covenant/Banished. If nothing else, Halo 4 and 5 definitely nailed that, even though those guns still had issues of their own. So, what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way is this. Hopefully future Forerunner weapons can be a little more creative and quote-unquote Forerunner, less restrictive and boxy. From there, we dip our toes into a couple Forerunner-themed maps for Infinite. We'll start off first with Behemoth, the new 4v4 arena map revealed during the previous flight. Behemoth was an incredibly well-received map, praised for bringing vehicles back to arena multiplayer, and lauded for its very familiar design. Indeed, the map looks like it could fit right at home in Halo 3. But as for lore, there isn't a ton to talk about in regards to the interior of the map, so much as what can be seen outside of it. We got glimpses of that prior to the map's release in concept art, but here, Grim reveals that the trenches that can be seen surrounding the map are in fact Zeta Halo's tectonic fabrication seams, quote, architectural features built to serve a multitude of parallel purposes from remediation to transportation. I can imagine these and other systems are working overtime by the setting of Halo Infinite, working to restore Zeta Halo after whatever devastated it prior to the game's beginning. I can't help but wonder if these features are also unique to Zeta Halo, the ring being the only survivor of the original 12-ring array. Installations 01 through 06 were designed differently, so I'm curious if they have these giant fabrication seams, or perhaps something more subtle. Wrapping up this part of the article, we have Fragmentation, the BTB map we'll be playing starting on Friday. Not much is given to us in this article, only that the map is filled with secrets to discover, such as networked beacons channeling untold energies across the ring. I can't wait to get an up-close look at this map, as I have some plans to do a showcase of each map from the flight, talking about lore and Easter eggs and the like. For now though, we begin wrapping things up. Grim highlights an amazing showcase of the Behemoth map from creator Sierra IO7, check that out on YouTube, and then reminds readers of the massive collection of concept art that was just dropped on the community last week. Check that out too. The article then comes to a close reminiscing on the 7 years of Canon Fodder, and spends a brief moment to talk about what exactly Canon is and means. I'm sure many of you watching have at least an idea of what Canon is precisely, but to quote Grim, Canon is essentially the curated collection of official fiction and story elements, which includes a mix of games, novels, reference books, and comics, as well as various linear media elements like animated features, live-action miniseries, and even certain marketing trailers and content. This is something I would love to address in more detail in the future, a look at what canon means, what it encompasses, and the differences between it and related terms like lore and story. But for now, canon is the body of official works produced and curated by, in this case, 343 Industries. And with that, we close out this latest issue. Certainly on the lighter side in terms of content, but I expect we'll be able to dive into more detail once Halo Infinite releases. So until such a time, this has been Halo Canon. Stick around for the Patreon shoutout, and keep on being awesome. First off, I'd like to give a big thank you to our Haruspis patrons. First, there's Hope, then we have Freight, Discombobulated Sycophant, Justin Montgomery, Ada Frame, Man in the Dark, Keisha Dila, Daddy Anarchy, and finally Great Scott Productions. Thank you all for your amazing support of the channel. Next, I'd like to thank our theoretical patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or get a direct shout out, check out patreon.com/halocanon. You can simply support the channel or get additional benefits such as behind the scenes materials, including raw audio for upcoming videos, or even shoutouts like this. All patrons now get early access to certain videos as well, and more benefits are to come. However, your continued viewership is more than enough for me. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, and maybe even subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. If you really enjoy this, turn on that notification bell so you can be among the first to see new videos when they release. But for all my fellow Canonites, keep on being awesome.